Jake Morrison stepped off the landing craft and onto the purple grass of the alien planet. The air smelled sweet like honey mixed with rain. He had been a soldier for 3 years, but nothing prepared him for what he saw next. Tall crystal towers rose from the mist ahead of him. They glowed with soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. His scanner showed nothing, but his eyes told a different story. These towers were real, and they were beautiful. He walked closer and heard his commander, Lisa Hayes, speaking through his earpiece. She told him to be careful. She told him the energy readings were going crazy. Jake nodded, even though she could not see him. The mist began to move, and Jake stopped walking. Something was coming toward him. Someone was coming toward him. She appeared like a ghost made of moonlight. Her skin glowed with silver light, and her ears came to points at the top. She wore armor that looked like dragon scales, colored green and gold. Her eyes burned with inner fire that made Jake forget how to breathe. Behind her, something massive moved in the fog. Jake saw wings that could cover the sky. He saw scales that shimmered like water under starlight. A dragon stepped out of the mist and looked at him with ancient, intelligent eyes. The woman spoke, and her voice sounded like music and thunder together. She said her name was Kayla, and she was of the Starborn people. She told Jake he should not have come to this place. Jake tried to introduce himself, but another person came from the crystal tower. An older woman who looked like Kayla but carried herself like a queen. She wore more decorated armor, and symbols that seemed to move on their own covered the metal plates. When her eyes found Jake, she stopped moving. Her face changed from curious to something that made Jake feel cold inside. She knew him somehow, even though they had never met. Kayla asked her mother what was wrong. The elder woman stepped forward and raised her hand. She pointed one long finger at Jake and spoke words that changed everything. She said the stars had shown her this moment. She said Jake carried the mark of destiny. Then she said the words that made no sense. She said Jake would wed her daughter. Jake felt his brain stop working. He asked what she meant. Kayla looked shocked and angry. She said Jake was just a human, and humans were primitive. She said humans barely knew how to travel between stars. The elder woman, whose name was Marana, cut her daughter off. She said the convergence was coming. She said the old enemy was waking up in the void between stars. She told Jake he carried something important, even though he did not know it yet. Marana turned to Kayla with eyes full of sadness and iron will. She said Kayla carried something Jake needed. She said together they might survive what was coming. She said apart both their peoples would burn in fire. The dragon behind them made a sound that vibrated through Jake like an earthquake. It lowered its huge head and sniffed the air around Jake. When it breathed out, Jake felt strange warmth wash over him. He heard a voice that was not quite sound. It said the flame recognized him. Jake spoke into his communicator and told Commander Hayes they had a situation. Lisa's voice came back tense and worried. She said unknown ships were entering the system. She said they were heading straight for Jake. Kayla put her hand on the weapon at her side. Her dragon spread wings that blocked out the alien sun. She whispered one word that sounded like a curse. Devourers. Marana's eyes began to glow brighter. She said it had begun. The sky above them tore open with light. A ship fell through the atmosphere like a meteor made of darkness. It was alive somehow, built from chitin and metal that seemed to drink light. The ship opened like a mouth and things poured out. They looked like insects crossed with sharks. They moved through air like water. Their screams made Jake's ears hurt and blood ran down the side of his face. Kayla grabbed Jake and threw him behind a crystal rock. Plasma fire burned the ground where he had been standing. Her dragon launched into the sky with a roar that shook the earth. It breathed fire that burned blue and white and met the attacking creature's head. Jake pulled his pistol, knowing it would not do much good. He asked what these things were. Kayla ignited her weapon, which crackled with lightning. She said they were devourers. She said they hunted her people across 1,000 worlds. She said they ate everything they touched. She explained the devourers were drawn to the life force of the Starborn, especially those bonded to dragons. More creatures fell from the sky like rain made of nightmares. Marana stood at the tower entrance. Her hands moved in patterns and barriers of light appeared around them. She called to Jake and told him his ship carried something from Earth, a crystal that was green and ancient. She told him to get it now. Jake started to ask how she knew, but Kayla grabbed his shoulder. She said her mother was a seer. She said if Marana said the crystal was there, then it was there. She told Jake to go and go fast. Jake ran toward his landing craft. He dodged plasma bolts and diving attacks. His communicator filled with static and Lisa's frantic voice. She said the Wanderer was under attack. She said these things were everywhere. Jake told her he was coming. He ran across alien ground while his lungs burned. Above him, dragons fought the enemy ships. The sky became a war zone of fire and darkness. He reached his ship and found his crew fighting for survival. Lieutenant Amy Chen fired a plasma rifle, while Dr. Kate Sullivan dragged a wounded crew member to safety. Amy shouted at Jake, asking what was happening. Jake said there was no time. He said he needed to reach Cargo Bay 3. A devourer crashed into the ground behind him, smoking from dragon fire. Jake kept running. In the cargo bay, Jake tore through containers until he found it. An emerald crystal the size of his fist. They had recovered it from a cave in Brazil before launch. It felt warm in his hand and pulsed with heat. Something stirred inside Jake like a door opening in his mind. When he came out of the ship, Kayla was waiting. Her armor was burned and she bled from many cuts. Her dragon landed beside her, looking equally hurt. She asked if he found it. Jake held up the crystal. Kayla's eyes went wide. She said it was the heart of the first fire. She said legends claimed it was lost when the Starborn first came to Earth thousands of years ago. She looked at Jake with new understanding. She said he was meant to find it and bring it back to them. Jake said he loved cosmic destiny. He asked what the crystal did. Kayla said it made the bond between dragon and rider stronger. She said with it, they might stop the Devourer fleet. She paused and met his eyes. She said it needed two bearers, one Starborn and one other. She said her mother's vision showed Jake and her together. The ground shook as a massive Devourer ship descended. It made all the others look small. Something ancient and terrible began coming out of it. Kayla whispered in horror. She said it was the Hive Lord. She said if it made a foothold here, the entire sector would fall. Marana appeared beside them, breathing hard. She said there was no more time for doubt. She said the bonding ritual must happen now, or all was lost. Jake looked at the crystal, and at Kayla, and at the sky full of monsters and dragons. He thought of Earth and billions of people who had no idea this war was happening above them. He thought of his crew fighting and dying. He asked what he had to do. Kayla took his hand, and he felt warmth from the crystals spread through them both. She told him to trust her, and whatever happened, he must not let go. Marana led them into the crystal tower while battle raged outside. The inside walls glowed with light and symbols that seemed to breathe and move. The dragon called Silverwind barely fit through the entrance. He folded his wings tight against his massive body. Marana explained the bonding ceremony was old when her people first traveled to the stars. It would link to souls across the barrier of species. It would create a bridge for power to flow. With the heart of the first fire, that bridge would become something greater. Jake asked what would happen to them. Kayla said they would become bonded. She said it was not marriage the way humans understood. She said they would be connected. Jake would feel what she felt. She would sense him no matter the distance. Together, they could channel power neither could use alone. An explosion shook the tower. Dust fell from above. Marana said the Hive Lord was breaking through their defenses. They had to hurry. They went down stairs that seemed impossible in such a narrow tower. The stairs opened into a chamber that took Jake's breath away. It was huge beyond belief. Floating crystals orbited each other in complex patterns. At the center, a platform hung above a pool of liquid light. Marana told Jake to place the heart at the center. She told Kayla to take her position. She told Jake he must stand before Kayla. She told Silverwind to guard them both. The dragon rumbled agreement. He moved around the platform in a protective circle. Jake and Kayla stepped onto the platform, which rose smoothly to the chamber's center. Jake placed the crystal between them. It flared with brilliant green light immediately. Kayla told him to take her hands. There was something vulnerable in her voice now. She said this was not how she imagined finding a bond partner. She thought she would choose someone. She thought it would be her decision. Jake tried to make a joke. He said he was not planning alien marriage when he woke up that day either. But here they were, saving the galaxy together. She smiled just a little. She said here they were. When their hands touched, the crystal exploded with light. Jake felt his mind expand outward, touching something vast and ancient. He saw through Kella's eyes. He felt her fear and determination. He sensed Silverwind's fierce intelligence, loyal and deadly. Beneath it all, he felt something else. A network of minds stretched across the stars. Dragons and their riders, the starborn people linked in a web of thought and emotion. He saw the Devourers for what they truly were. A plague, a hunger-given form. They consumed world after world, leaving nothing but emptiness behind. They had destroyed dozens of civilizations. They would not stop until every spark of life in the galaxy was gone. Jake thought with fierce determination that it would not be. Earth. Not today. The crystal's light grew stronger. He felt power flowing through him and through Kayla. It moved between them in an endless loop. It built and built until Jake thought he would burn from the inside out. Marana's voice cut through the light. She shouted now. She told them to channel it through the dragon. Kella's hands tightened on Jake's hands. Together they pushed the energy toward Silverwind. The dragon roared. His scales ignited with green fire that spread across his entire body. He grew larger, expanding until he filled half the chamber. His power multiplied 100 times over. Kayla commanded him to go. She told him to drive them back. Silverwind exploded upward through the towers, sealing, leaving a dragon-shaped hole in the crystal. Through their new bond, Jake felt everything the dragon felt. He burst into the battlefield above. The sky was full of Devourers. Thousands of them swarmed around the massive Hive Lord ship. Silverwind unleashed. Green flame that consumed everything it touched. Devourers fell from the sky like burning rain. Other dragons sensed the surge of power and rallied to Silverwind. The tide of battle began to turn. But the Hive Lord itself was descending. Even empowered by the heart of the first fire, Jake was not sure they could stop it. Through the bond, he felt Kella's thought. Together. They would do this together. Suddenly Jake understood. It was not just about power. It was about connection. About unity. The Devourers were singular, each one driven only by hunger. But the Starborn and the dragons and now Jake were something the Devourers could never be. They were together. The Hive Lord was massive beyond understanding. It was a living ship the size of a mountain. It pulsed with dark energy that made reality itself seem to warp around it. As it came down toward the planet, its shadow covered the land like a blanket that suffocated. Everything Jake and Kayla stood on the platform. Still linked through the heart of the first fire, they felt every moment of battle through Silverwind and the other dragons. The bond had changed them both. Jake could sense the energy of living things around him now. They were bright points of light in his mind. Kayla had gained something from him too. A determination and tactical thinking born from human military training. Marana called from the edge of the platform. She said the Hive Lord carried a queen. If the queen made a nest here, this world would become a breeding ground for 1 billion Devourers. They had to stop her before she reached the surface. Through the tower's broken ceiling, Jake watched Silverwind lead the dragon flight in desperate assault on the Hive Lord. There. Flames washed over its shell, but it barely seemed to notice. It kept coming down and nothing they did could slow it, Jake said suddenly. They needed to get inside. The thing was organic. It had to have vital systems. Heart. Something they could destroy from within. Kella's eyes widened. Jake was suggesting they board it. Jake said he was suggesting they kill it from the inside. He looked at her, feeling her fear through the bond, but also her courage. He asked if Silverwind could get them in there. She closed her eyes, talking with her dragon across the distance. When she opened them again, they blazed with determination. She said Silverwind called it suicide, which meant he was absolutely willing to try. Marana stepped forward. She placed her hands on both their shoulders. She said if they did this, they might not return. The heart had bonded them, but the connection was still new and fragile. Inside that monster surrounded by darkness, they could lose themselves. Jake said if they did not do this, Earth would fall. His people did not even know this war existed. They could not defend themselves. Kayla added her people had run long enough. They would make their stand here. The elder nodded slowly. She pressed something into Jake's hand, a small crystal shard. She said if they found the queen, they should press this into her flesh. It contained the essence of the first fire, concentrated. It would burn the queen from within. Silverwind descended through the hole in the ceiling. He landed on the platform with surprising delicacy despite his enhanced size. Green flames still covered his body, fed by power flowing through the bond. Jake and Kayla climbed onto his back. The dragon's scales were warm beneath them. Jake felt the creature's fierce determination through their connection. Silverwind's thought came through clearly. For the hatchlings. For those who cannot fight, Jake agreed. For everyone, they launched into the air. Wind tore at Jake's uniform as Silverwind climbed. Around them, battle raged. Jake saw Amy Chen on the ground leading human marines and starborn warriors together. Dr. Kate Sullivan tended wounded from both species, working side by side with starborn healers. The Wanderer hung in the sky, damaged but still. Fighting. Its weapons carved lines of fire through devourer swarms. Commander Lisa Hayes' voice came through his communicator. Asking where Jake was going, he shouted back over. The wind that he was going to end this. Silverwind dove toward. The Hive Lord weaving through plasma fire and swarms of devourers. Other dragons followed, creating a protective formation around them. The Hive Lord's surface was a nightmare of shifting chitin and pulsing organic tubes. Openings like wounds gaped in its hull, breathing creatures in and out. Silverwind picked the largest opening and dove straight in. The inside of the Hive Lord was worse than Jake imagined. It was hot and humid, like breathing inside a living stomach. The walls pulsed with life. The air stank of decay and something else. Something that made every instinct scream danger. Kayla pointed ahead. Her warrior senses guided them. She said she felt the queen. The presence was overwhelming. They flew through twisting passages. Silverwind's fire lit their way. Devourers crawled along the walls, but the dragon's flames kept them away. Through the bond, Jake felt Kella's disgust at their surroundings. He sent her strength in return. She smiled at him, brief but genuine. The passage opened into a vast chamber. There she was. The Devourer Queen was an abomination. She was bloated and huge, the size of a building. Thousands of eggs surrounded her, pulsing with sickly light. Her intelligence blazed in the bond, alien and utterly evil. When she sensed them, she screamed. The sound was a psychic assault that nearly broke their minds. Kayla shouted now. Silverwind unleashed every bit of fire he had. Green flames poured over the queen. She thrashed and screamed, but her hide was thick and armored. The flames alone would not be enough. Jake felt the crystal shard in his hand. He looked at Kayla. Through the bond they understood each other perfectly. Together they jumped from Silverwind's back. They fell through the air toward the queen. Time seemed to slow. Jake saw Kella's hair streaming behind her. Her expression was fierce and beautiful. He felt Silverwind's alarm through the bond. The dragon dove to catch them, but they had to get close. The shard had to pierce the queen's flesh directly at the last moment. Kayla created a platform of hardened air beneath their feet. It was a technique she learned from her mother. They landed on the queen's back. Her armor was slick and hot beneath them. Devourers swarmed toward them from all directions. Silverwind bathed them in fire, but more kept coming. Kayla fought with her energy blade, cutting through them with precise strikes. Jake fired his pistol until it clicked empty. Then he grabbed a fallen devourer's claw and used it as a weapon. Through their bond, he felt Kella's strength flowing into him. It made him faster and stronger than any human should be. She drew on his determination in return. His refusal to give up even when the odds were impossible. Together, they carved a path across the queen's back. Kayla pointed at a spot where the armor was thinner, almost transparent. Through it, they could see the queen's massive heart pulsing with dark energy. Jake pulled out the crystal shard. It blazed in his hand, responding to their combined will. He asked if they should do it on 3. Kaela agreed on. 3, 1. They stood together, back to back against the swarm. 2. Silverwind roared above them, holding back the tide. 3. They drove the shard into the queen's flesh. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. The shard burned brighter than the sun. Green fire spread through the queen's body like wildfire. She shrieked. The sound echoed through the psychic bond and into the minds of every living thing on the planet. Kayla called for Silverwind. The dragon was there instantly, scooping them up as the queen's body began to collapse. They flew through disintegrating passages. The entire Hive Lord was breaking apart around them. Behind them, the queen's death scream grew fainter. It was replaced by the sound of the organic ship tearing itself to pieces. They burst out into open air just as the Hive Lord exploded. The shockwave sent them tumbling. Silverwind steadied himself, using the enhanced power that still flowed through their bond. All across the sky, devourers were falling. Their connection to the queen was severed. Without her, they were just animals, confused and directionless. The remaining dragons made short work of them. Silverwind landed near the crystal tower, exhausted. The green flames had faded. He was back to his normal size, breathing hard. Jake and Kayla slid from his back, equally drained. The battlefield was covered with bodies of devourers. But the defenders, both human and starborn, were cheering. Amy Chen was hugging Dr. Sullivan. Both were covered in soot and blood but grinning. The Wanderer had landed. Commander Lisa Hayes was already organizing cleanup and medical teams. Marana approached them. Her expression mixed pride and relief. She said they did it. The Hive Lord was dead, and the Devourer fleet was scattering. This world was safe. Jake asked about Earth. Marana said Earth was safe for now. The Devourers were using this world as a staging ground for a larger invasion. Jake and Kayla had bought his people time. They had given the Starborn a chance to make contact properly. To forge an alliance? She looked between Jake and Kayla. The bond they shared was stronger than she dared hope. They truly were matched. Jake felt Kayla's presence in his mind, a warmth that had become as natural as breathing. He said he guessed they were stuck with each other. Kayla laughed, tired but genuine. She said she supposed there were worse fates. Jake fought well for a human. Jake said Kayla was not bad herself for an alien elf with a dragon. Over the next few days, humans and Starborn worked together to repair damage and establish formal diplomatic relations. Jake and Kayla found themselves the center of attention. Their bond had become a symbol of what was possible when different peoples worked together. One evening, Jake stood on a cliff overlooking the crystal towers. He watched the alien sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. Kayla joined him. Silverwind curled up behind them like a massive scaly guard dog. Jake asked what happened now. The Devourers would be back eventually. This was just one fleet, Kayla said. Now they prepared. They would share knowledge with his people. They would build alliances across the stars. They would fight together when the Devourers returned. She took his hand. The bond her mother forced upon them she had resented at first, but she understood now. They were stronger together than they ever could be apart. Jake said, "United we stand." It was an old Earth saying, but it felt right. Far above them, human and starborn ships patrolled together, a combined fleet standing watch over the recovering world. In the distance, Jake could see the Wanderer preparing for its journey home. It carried news that would change Earth forever. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. Whether they were ready or not, they had just joined a war that spanned the stars. But looking at Kayla and feeling the warmth of their bond and the fierce protectiveness of Silverwind, behind them, Jake could not help but feel hopeful. The Devourers were strong. The battles ahead would be terrible, but they would not face them alone. Never alone again. 6. Months later, Jake Morrison would return to Earth as an ambassador. Kayla and Silverwind would be at his side. The crystal towers of this planet would become a symbol of unity between species. When the Devourers came again, as everyone knew they would, humanity would be ready, because humanity now had dragons, and the dragons had found unlikely allies in the stars. Bond between Jake and Kayla grew stronger each day. They learned to communicate without words. They shared dreams and memories. Through Kayla, Jake learned the history of the Starborn, how they had fled the Devourers for 10,000 years, how they had seeded life on many worlds, including Earth, long ago. Through Jake, Kayla learned about human determination, about a species that refused to give up even when facing impossible odds, about people who would fight for strangers and die for ideas like freedom and justice. Together, they became something new. Not human, not Starborn. Something in between. A bridge between two civilizations that needed each other to survive. The war was far from over. The Hive Lord they killed was one of many. The Devourer swarms numbered in the billions spread across the galaxy. But now the Starborn had hope. Now they had allies, and the humans had dragons. The future was uncertain. The battles would be hard. Many would die before this war ended. But standing together, watching the alien sunset with their bond burning bright between them, Jake and Kayla knew they had a chance to save both their peoples, a chance to forge a new future among the stars. A chance to show the Devourers that prey could become predators, that the hunted could become hunters, that together different species could become unstoppable. The alien woman's mother had seen Jake and declared he would wed her daughter. At the time it seemed like madness, but Marana had seen what others could not. She had seen the future that was possible, a future where humanity and the Starborn stood together against the darkness. And she had seen that it all began with two unlikely souls bonded by fire and fate. Jake Morrison and Kayla of the Starborn, the first of many, the beginning of something greater than either species could be. Alone, the start of a legend that would echo across the stars for generations to come. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks, even with Starborn navigation helping the Wanderer travel faster than normal. Jake stood on the bridge watching his home planet grow larger in the view screen, blue and green and beautiful. Unaware of the war raging in the galaxy beyond, Kayla stood beside him. She had never seen Earth before. She thought it was lovely. Through their bond, Jake felt her wonder and also her worry. They were about to change everything for his people. Commander Lisa Hayes approached them. She looked tired. The battle on the alien planet had cost them 12 crew members, good people who died fighting monsters from nightmares. But they had also gained something, an alliance that might save humanity. Lisa told Jake the government had been informed. World leaders were gathering. They wanted to meet the aliens. They wanted proof. They wanted answers. Jake said they would get all three. Silverwind was too large to land on Earth, so he remained in orbit with other Starborn ships. But the dragon's presence in Jake's mind was constant, a warm, reassuring weight that reminded him he was not alone in this. The Wanderer landed at a secure military base in Nevada. Jake had been there before during training. Now it was filled with soldiers and scientists and politicians all wanting to see the alien visitors. Kayla walked down the landing ramp with Jake. She wore simpler clothes now instead of armor, but she still moved with warrior grace. Cameras flashed. People gasped. Some looked afraid. Others looked amazed. General Sarah Martinez met them. She was the head of Earth Defense Forces, a stern woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She looked at Kayla for a long moment, then extended her hand. Kayla understood the gesture from Jake's memories, shared through their bond. She shook the general's hand. Her grip was firm. The general nodded with approval. They were taken to a conference room deep underground. World leaders appeared on screens around the room. The President of the United States sat at the head of the table. Prime ministers and chancellors and presidents from every major nation watched and waited. Jake stood before them all. Kayla beside him. He had prepared a speech, but looking at their faces, he abandoned it. Instead, he told them the truth, plain and simple. He said humanity was not alone in the universe. He said there were other intelligent species out there. Some friendly, like the Starborn, others hostile, like the Devourers. He said a war had been raging for thousands of years, a war that was coming to Earth whether they wanted it or not. The Devourers would not stop. They would not negotiate. They consumed everything living and moved on to the next world. He said the Starborn had been fighting alone for too long. They were tired and outnumbered. But together, humans and Starborn might stand a chance. The room erupted in questions. Everyone talked at once. The president raised her hand for silence. She was a tall woman with kind eyes that had seen hard decisions. She asked Jake if he truly believed this threat was real. Jake said he had seen it with his own eyes. He had fought them. He had watched good people die. He gestured to Kayla. He said she and her people had been running from the Devourers for 10,000 years. Earth was their last hope, just as they were Earth's only chance. The French president asked why they should believe any of this. It could be an elaborate hoax or invasion plan. Kayla spoke for the first time. Her voice was calm, but carried authority. She said they did not need to believe words. She said she would show them. She closed her eyes, and Jake felt her reach out through their bond to Silverwind in orbit. The dragon responded immediately. He sent images and memories through Kayla to Jake to the neural interface connected to the conference room displays. Everyone in the room gasped as holographic images filled the air. They saw worlds burning, cities consumed by devourer swarms. They saw dragons fighting impossible odds. They saw the Hive Lord descending on the alien planet. They saw Jake and Kayla bonded through the crystal, fighting together. The images were not recordings. They were memories lived and shared. Undeniable proof of everything Jake had said. When the images faded, silence filled the room. The Chinese premier spoke first. She asked what the Starborn wanted from Earth. Kayla said they wanted alliance. They would share technology and knowledge. They would teach humans to fight the Devourers. They would help build defenses. In return, they asked for soldiers willing to fight, for resources to build ships, for a home where their people could rest. The Russian president asked what made humans special. Why should the Starborn ally with such a primitive species? Jake answered before Kayla could. He said humans had something the Starborn had lost: hope, determination, stubbornness. Humans did not give up, even when the universe said they should. Humans looked at impossible odds and said, "Watch us anyway." He said the Starborn had been running for so long they forgot how to truly fight back. But humans knew how to fight. It was what they did best. Sometimes for terrible reasons, but also for noble ones. And protecting their home, defending their families, that was the most noble reason of all. The president looked at Jake for a long moment. Then she looked at Kayla. She asked if the Starborn truly believed humans could make a difference. Kayla smiled. She said she had not believed it at first. She thought humans were primitive and weak. But then she met Jake. She fought beside him. She bonded with him. She learned that sometimes the smallest spark could start the greatest fire. She said humans and Starborn together would be that fire. They would burn so bright the Devourers would flee before them. The room fell silent again. World leaders looked at each other. Silent communications passed between them. Finally, the president spoke. She said Earth would need time. They would need to prepare their people. They would need to build infrastructure. Yes, Earth would join the alliance. Jake felt relief wash through him. Beside him, Kayla's hand found his. Through their bond, he felt her joy and hope. The general asked when the Devourers might come. Kayla said perhaps months, perhaps years. The swarm they defeated was a scouting force. The main fleet was still far away, but it was coming. It never stopped coming. The president said then they had work to do. She turned to the general and began giving orders. Contact every nation. Begin production of weapons using starborn designs. Start training programs. Build the fleet over the next 6 months. Earth changed faster than anyone thought possible. Starborn engineers worked with human scientists. Dragon riders trained human pilots. Ancient starborn knowledge merged with human. Innovation creating weapons and ships unlike anything either species had built alone. Jake became a symbol of the alliance. Where he went, Kayla followed. Where Kayla went, Silverwind was never far. People grew used to seeing dragons in the sky. Children played games pretending to be dragon riders. Not everyone was happy. Some religious leaders called it the end times. Some politicians tried to use fear for power. Some people simply could not accept that humans were not alone. But most people looked up at the stars with new eyes. They saw not just distant lights, but possible homes, possible allies, possible threats. They saw a universe vast and dangerous and full of wonder. Jake stood on a hill outside the military base watching construction. Dozens of shipyards built the new fleet. Hybrid designs mixing human and starborn technology. Each ship crewed by both species working together. Kayla joined him as she always did. They did not need words anymore. Through the bond, they shared everything. Thoughts and feelings flowing between them like water. Amy Chen had volunteered to train as a dragon rider. She was one of hundreds of humans selected. Not everyone could bond with a dragon, but those who could became something special. Elite warriors who would lead the fight. Dr. Kate Sullivan worked with starborn healers learning medicine that seemed like magic. She said human doctors could learn much from a species that lived for centuries. Commander. Lisa Hayes captained the first hybrid ship, the Unity, a vessel that symbolized everything the Alliance stood for. She took it on its maiden voyage, with half-human, half-starborn crew. They reported it handled like a dream. Jake watched it all and felt pride. His people were adapting. They were learning. They were preparing, but he also felt fear. He had seen what the Devourers could do. He knew what was coming. Even with all their preparation, would it be enough? Kayla sensed his doubt through the bond. She sent him strength and certainty. She reminded him they were not alone. Neither species had to face this darkness by itself anymore. Jake smiled and pulled her close. She leaned against him. Above them, Silverwind circled lazy and content. A dragon flying free over Earth. A sight that would have been impossible a year ago. Now it was just another day in the new world. They were building together. A world where humans and starborn stood united against the darkness between stars. A world worth fighting for, worth dying for if necessary, but, more importantly, worth living for. Together. 2 years passed since Earth joined the Alliance. 2 years of building and training and preparing. The combined fleet numbered 300 ships now. Not enough to match the Devourer's swarm, but enough to make them bleed. Jake stood on the bridge of the Unity alongside Commander Lisa Hayes. He was a captain now, leading his own strike force. Kayla commanded the starborn wing. Together they had fought a dozen small skirmishes against Devourer scouts. Each time they won. Each time they learned more about their enemy. But today was different. Today the sensors showed something that made Jake's blood run cold. The main swarm had arrived. Thousands of Devourer ships poured out of the void between stars. They filled the space beyond Neptune like a plague of locusts. At their center floated something massive. A superstructure larger than Earth's moon. The Devourer command ship. Lisa's voice was steady, despite the fear Jake sensed from her. She ordered all ships to battle stations. She opened channels to every vessel in the fleet, human and starborn alike. She said this was it. The moment they had prepared for. The enemy they had trained to fight. She said she would not lie and tell them it would be easy. Many would die today. But those deaths would matter. They would buy time for billions of innocents. They would prove that prey could become predators. She said, "Fight well. Fight smart. Fight together. And make the devourers regret ever coming to this system." The fleet erupted in cheers. Jake felt it through the bond as Kayla rallied the Starborn. He felt Silverwind's fierce joy at the coming battle. The dragon had grown even larger over 2 years, feeding on the energy of their bond. He was a monster now. A beautiful, terrifying engine of destruction. The devourers advanced. Their ships moved in perfect coordination like a single organism, which in a way they were. All connected to the queens. All driven by endless hunger, the human Starborn fleet met them halfway between Neptune and Uranus. Space erupted in fire and light. Jake commanded his strike force with precision. 5 ships moving as one. They targeted devourer cruisers, punching through their defenses with combined fire. Kella's dragon riders swept in behind, destroying crippled ships before they could regenerate. It was a dance they had practiced hundreds of times. Human technology and tactics merged with Starborn power and speed. The devourers fell back confused. They had never faced organized resistance like this before, but there were so many of them. For every ship the Alliance destroyed, 10 more took its place. The devourer swarm began to envelop the fleet. Their greater numbers would eventually overwhelm the defenders. Jake knew this. They all knew this. But the goal was not to win. Not yet. The goal was to delay. To buy time for the evacuation fleets to move civilians from the inner planets to prepared bunkers on Earth. He watched as the Wanderer, his old ship, took a direct hit. It broke apart in silence. 200 souls gone in an instant. His jaw clenched, but he kept fighting. He could mourn later if there was a later. Through the bond, he felt Kella's anguish as Starborn ships died. He sent her strength. She sent him determination. Silverwind sent them both his fury. The dragon had joined the battle directly. He was not alone. Thousands of dragons fought alongside their riders. They breathed fire that burned cold as space itself. They tore through devourer ships with claws that could rend metal. They were magnificent and deadly, and still not enough. The devourer command ship began to move. It advanced slowly, but inexorably, toward the inner system, toward Earth. Lisa opened a channel to all ships. She said the evacuation was complete. All civilians were safe. Now it was time for the final gambit. She ordered the fleet to concentrate all fire on the command ship. Every weapon, every missile, everything they had, Jake understood immediately. They could not stop the swarm. But if they killed the command ship, they might disrupt the devourer coordination. Might by weeks or months before they reorganized, the entire fleet turned as one. 300 ships, human and Starborn together. They unleashed hell. The command ship's shields flared brilliant against the onslaught. Energy beams and missiles and dragon fire all hammered against it. For a moment, Jake thought it might hold. Then cracks appeared in the shields. Then the shields fell. The command ship's hull began to burn. Atmosphere vented into space. But it was so large, so massive. Their weapons were like throwing rocks at a mountain. Then Kella's voice filled the bond. She had an idea. A crazy, desperate idea. Jake felt it in his mind, and his first instinct was to say no. It was too dangerous. She could die. But she reminded him through the bond that this was what they trained for. This was why they bonded. To do what neither could do alone. Jake closed his eyes and agreed. He told Lisa the plan. She was quiet for a moment, then she gave the order. All ships were to focus fire on one point. Create an opening, Kayla. And the dragon riders would do the rest. The fleet concentrated fire on the command ship's forward section. Metal boiled away under the assault. A hole opened large enough for ships to pass through. Kayla led 50 dragon riders straight into it. Silverwind was first. Jake felt everything through the bond. The heat, the darkness, the wrongness of the devourer ship's interior. They flew through twisting passages following Kayla's instincts. She could sense the ship's heart, the central intelligence that coordinated the entire swarm. If they could destroy it, the devourers would become animals. Dangerous, but not coordinated. They found it deep in the ship's core, a massive brain-like structure pulsing with dark energy. It sensed them and screamed. The scream was psychic. It tried to break their minds. Some riders fell. Their dragons caught them and fled. But most held on. Kayla drew on the bond. Drew on Jake's strength and determination. Drew on every human and starborn connected to the network. She channeled it all through Silverwind. The dragon became a star. Green fire brighter than anything Jake had ever seen poured from him. The other dragons added their flames. Together, they became an inferno. The devourer intelligence burned. It thrashed and screamed and died. The effect was immediate. Throughout the swarm, devourer's ships stopped moving in coordination. They became confused. They began to fight each other in their hunger. Kayla ordered the retreat. The dragon riders fled the dying command ship. Most made it out. Some did not. Jake felt each death through the bond. Felt Kayla's grief as riders she had trained and befriended died saving the fleet. But they had done it. They had stopped the swarm. For now, the Alliance fleet regrouped. They were battered and bleeding. They had lost a third of their ships. Thousands were dead. But they had one. Earth was safe. The inner worlds were safe. Humanity had proved it could stand against the darkness. Jake found Kayla after the battle. They held each other, not speaking, just feeling. The bond between them had grown so strong now. It was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. Silverwind landed nearby. The great dragon was exhausted. Burns covered his scales, but his eyes still burned with fierce pride. They had protected the hatchlings. They had saved their home. Lisa approached them. She looked older. War did that to people. She said the government was calling it the Battle of Neptune. She said Earth wanted to honor the fallen. She said they wanted to build a monument. Jake said the dead did not need monuments. They needed to be remembered. Their sacrifice needed to matter. Lisa agreed. She said it would matter, because this was just the beginning. The devourers would come again, stronger, angrier, more coordinated. But next time humanity would be ready. Next time, they would have more ships, more weapons, more dragon riders. Next time, they would not just defend. They would attack. They would take the fight to the devourers. They would end this war once and for all. Kayla looked at Jake. He looked back. Through the bond, they shared the same thought. Together, they would do it together. Humans and starborn. Dragons and riders. An alliance forged in fire and tested in battle. An alliance that would burn across the galaxy until every devourer was ash and memory. The war was not over. It might never be over. But for the first time in 10,000 years, the Starborn had hope. Real hope. Not just survival, but victory. And humanity had learned its place in the universe. Not alone. Not helpless. But part of something greater. Part of a community of species fighting for life against the darkness. Jake looked up at the stars. So many of them. So many worlds. So many battles yet to fight. But he was not afraid. Because he was not alone, none of them were alone anymore. The alien woman's mother had seen him and declared he would wed her daughter. At the time, it seemed like madness. Now Jake understood. It was not about marriage. It was about unity, about connection, about proving that different species could become one. He was bonded to Kayla. Humanity was bonded to the Starborn. Together, they were stronger than the sum of their parts. Together, they would light a fire that would chase away the darkness between stars. Together, they would show the universe that some prey refused to die quietly, that some species, when pushed, would push back harder, that sometimes the hunter became the hunted, and the devourers were about to learn that lesson in Fire and Blood and Dragon. Song. The war continued. The alliance grew. More species joined, seeking refuge from the devourer tide. Each brought their own strengths, their own warriors, their own hope, and at the center of it all stood Jake Morrison and Kayla of the Starborn. The first bonded pair, the symbol of unity. The spark that started the greatest fire the galaxy had ever